Welcome to the second nutrition workshop for 10% performance. Now, for today, I'm going to be breaking down what nutrition truly means, some calories, macronutrients, and micronutrients, and why they're important to you. On top of that, we're going to go over a few myths that circle around the nutrition industry, as well as making nutrition stick when it comes to knowing exactly what you should be doing to hit your goals. Now, when we talk about nutrition, we like to think of nutrition as data and education. Now, if we break that down a little bit simpler for you guys, the more data there is, the more justified decisions that can be made. So if we're talking about in this instance of you coaching yourself or you're working with a coach, some examples of this would be weigh-ins. If we're getting an average weight total throughout the week, we can make a more justified decision if our calories should go up, our calories should go down, our activity should go up, our activity should go down. These are the inferred decisions that we should be making to ensure that we're striving towards the goals that we want. Progress photos, I like to say the most important thing, if I was to compare these two right here, progress photos are always going to reign supreme to the weigh-ins. Why? Someone could look 200 pounds, but they could be 100. Same thing vice versa. Someone could be 100 pounds, or someone could look 100 pounds, but be actually 200 pounds. So the reality of the situation is always those progress photos. Seeing those week by week or every other week in this instance will be very, very important to ensure we're moving towards the goal that we want. Now, on top of that, we want to look at our strength and rep progressions. Now, rep progressions or strength progressions for that matter should be seeing that improvement in increases of reps. It should be improvements in increasing of weight. When we're in, let's just say, for example, a caloric deficit, we should be trying to preserve as much muscle mass as possible. So not only on the nutrition side, but also in the gym side. So we want the intensity to be up there. We want to preserve some of that muscle mass by really trying to push those progressions, even when we don't feel the best going into the gym. Circumference measurements, think of this as waist, hip, chest, things like that. Another form of measurement that will be similar to these guys right here. And then clothes fitting. This is more, I would say, what you feel. It's not the best indicator of showcasing it as a week by week scenario compared to the circumference, the weigh-ins, and the progress photos, but it is a good telltale sign for someone that potentially does not want to weigh themselves in, may not want to do progress photos, or may not want to do any sort of circumference measurements. So it gives you some form of data to make a justified decision from there. Now, the other side of nutrition, I say, is education. The reason I say that is that the more that we know why we are doing what we're doing, the more invested we are in succeeding, right? The more that we know about something, the more that we can make those, again, justified decisions to get closer to succeeding into the goals that we want. If me as a coach telling you guys, okay, you have to eat X, Y, Z, and me not explaining why you have to do so, at some point you're going to start to think he's kind of full of, SHIT. But aside from that, we want you guys to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how important it is to get towards what you want to accomplish. Now, breaking it down a little bit further, and this is probably the easiest way I could describe nutrition to you, aside from just the education and the data. Now, our calories are going to determine what we weigh, okay? Calories or a caloric surplus is going to potentially create more weight. So if I weigh 150 pounds, if I eat a caloric surplus of 500, 600, 700 calories every single day for 7 days, I am most likely going to gain weight, albeit it's considered physical activity and things of that nature. If I was to do a caloric deficit, same deal, down 500 calories, 7 days, I would potentially be losing a little bit of weight, all things considered. And if I was in a caloric maintenance, maintaining my calories of what my TDE will be, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, then I'd be weighing the exact same at the end of the week, plus or minus 0.123 pounds. Our macronutrients are going to determine what we look like. Okay, what we look like in the mirror is going to determine what those macronutrients are. If we want to break down what macronutrients are, it's going to be your protein, your carbohydrates, your fat, and technically your alcohol as well, because they are going to have some calories per gram to it. Now, I wrote down here what it looks like calories per gram, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit later today. But for protein, you have 4 calories per gram as well as the carbohydrates, and then your fats are 9 calories per gram as well. Micronutrients, now think of micro as, well, we think of micro as not as important, but think of this as just smaller nutrients, okay? They're equally as important as macronutrients as calories. They're just in smaller trace amounts than relative to your macronutrients. Now, your macronutrients are going to be the thing that makes up your calories. Your micronutrients are not going to be making up what your calories look like. Your micronutrients determine how you feel and internally function. So think of vitamins and minerals. How can we fill most of our meals throughout the day with as much vitamins and minerals as possible to hit the markers that we want so that we can internally feel good as well as function at our absolute best capacity. Now, what I see with nutrition, what they typically teach you is that calories should be known first, macronutrients should be known second, and micronutrients should be known third. Whether they teach you that or you learn it that way, what I believe it should be and how you should learn what is what, micronutrients should come first, because again, how we internally feel, how we internally function will then catapult us towards the macronutrients, which will then determine how we look. The better that we look, the better that we feel. Those calories are typically going to be comprised of that. So I like to think micro should always be number one in trying to figure out our best way of eating throughout the day and in a sustainability aspect. Macronutrients should be the second thing, where we're making up those proteins, those carbohydrates, those fats, getting good quality whole nutrition in there. And then those calories, because again, you could say calories are king, but at the end of the day, if your calories are made up of not the greatest foods, you're not going to necessarily look your best. You may hit the goals that you want on the scale, but how you look in body compositional standpoint may not be what you actually want. Now, moving on, I want to talk about two myths that I see circulating pretty often in the nutrition industry. Number one, cheat meals ruin progress. I think cheat meals get a negative connotation on what they truly are. I think of cheat meals as fun foods, potentially. I also think of cheat meals as something that should be put in as a daily measurement if you are someone who is just trying to improve their lifestyle, right? Even if you're trying to improve your body composition in some way, increasing muscle mass, losing a little bit of body fat, cheap foods, or fun foods for that matter, should be put in on a daily measure to keep you sustainable as best as possible. It's just how we level everything. So what I say is, the truth in this matter, it's all about the overall consistency that you create, not one single meal. Now, I wanted to give a graph just so you guys could see essentially what I'm talking about here. So let's just say this is a 7-day week, right? We have Sunday all the way to Saturday. Let's just say someone, for example, has a TDE or a caloric maintenance that is going to be anywhere from 2,500 calories. So if someone were to eat 2,500 calories every single day, they would maintain the same weight. So let's just say they started at 150 pounds on week 1, and then on week 2, they ended at 150.2. Okay, let's just say it's still going to be in that maintenance range. Let's start on Monday to just make it a little bit easier for us. Now on Monday, they're trying to lose weight, so they ate 2,000 calories. Now let's say on Tuesday, same deal, they're pretty close, they're at 2,100. Wednesday, they were really on top of things, or it was a really busy day, they had 1,900. Thursday, they're back to that 2,000 calorie range. Friday, they're back in that 2,000 calorie range. They're really excited, they're really happy about what they did throughout the weekdays. They were super on point of everything. And right now, if we think about it, they are in that caloric deficit. So if we're trying to measure someone's caloric deficit in this magnitude, right, 2,500 calorie net total you have daily, and you're down by 500 here, 400 here, 600, 500, and 500, you're gonna be pretty significantly down. Now here's the kicker. There's still 2 days out of that week. Let's just say, for example, now that Saturday, you went out, you had drinks, you had a typical meal that you wouldn't have during dinner time, and it was, let's just say, overeating, right? You ate a little bit more because you've been really on top of everything. You wanted to reward yourself at the end of the week. Now we're talking 3,200 calories on Saturday. Now the problem with this is you might think to yourself the next day either one or two things. One, it's like, oh, I didn't do that great Saturday, I might as well just do the same thing on Sunday, which sometimes happens. Or number two, you say to yourself, oh, I am really craving this donut, this cookie, this chicken parm, whatever it is, because you just ate so much here, your body's ravenous for a little bit more, and you have a little bit more this time. This time you have 3,500 calories. So it was once a caloric deficit throughout the week, is now a caloric surplus on the weekend, and because that caloric surplus is that much greater of that weekday, you're potentially going to see, let's just say, either maintaining the same weight, relatively, depending on, bloating and things like that, or you would also see an increase in weight. So instead of that 150.2, you might see 150.4 in that case. So remember, at the end of the day, the weekends still count, but we want to try to figure out how we could plan those cheats regularly so you could stay consistent, you could stay sustainable, and you could hit your goals every single week without feeling like you're dieting, okay? I want to pay your attention a little bit to the scale right here. Now, we're talking about the difference between one meal throughout a week and the consistency that's thereof. What weighs way greater is the consistency that you can maintain throughout a week versus just one meal of that week. Now, the problem is that one meal sometimes turns into 2, and then to 3, and then to 4, and at that point, then it starts to outweigh the consistency that you had throughout the weekday. You could gain all the momentum you want on the weekday, but if you do not carry that into the weekend and keep it there, it is going to be very, very hard to see the results you want in the time frame that you want. Now, let's just talk about planning those cheats a little more regularly for you guys. I think of this as the 70-30 rule. You might have heard of the 80-20 rule. I've created the 70-30 rule, or move more towards there, because most of you have a very, very busy schedule. Most of us do. And with that being said, if we could get at least 70% of whole nutrient-dense foods into our program, into our eating plan every single day, while also accompanying about 30% of fun foods in there, we would see a lot more sustainability, number one. And then over time, the results that we want are going to come that much quicker because we're enjoying what we're doing. There's not a big stress response as well, and everything's working the way that we want. So let's just take the same example that we have right here. Someone's at 2,500 calories on their TDEE. This is how many calories they burn daily. They're saying 150 pounds on week 1. And then we go, same deal, Sunday through Monday. So let's just say, for example, on Sunday, we have, on this scale, we have 70% of our food being totaled at, just for lack of better judgment, 2,000 calories, 2,100 calories. Your 30% of your food from there are gonna come from around 500 to 400 calories of the day. Now, as you guys know, 400 to 500 calories is a good amount. It's close to a meal. So you are able to have those fun foods, those cheats that you had on that Saturday, Sunday, spreading it out through the week so you're actually enjoying every single day that you're eating, aside from being super strict on that Monday to Friday and just keeping up the same plan from there. And what you'll see is, let's just say, for example, on this day, we're at 2,000 calories, okay, same deal here, 2,000 on the Tuesday, 2,000 on that Wednesday. We actually did better on Thursday, we went down to 1,900. Then on Thursday, we went back up to that 2,000. Now you'll notice we've been at a pretty good deficit, around 2,000 to 2,500 throughout the week. But now we had a little bit more on Saturday, Sunday, because again, we want you to splurge a little bit, enjoy yourself. So the calories might be more, but you don't have those same cravings, you don't have that same reward factor because you've been eating those fun foods throughout the week. Let's just say this went up to 2,800 instead, and this one on Sunday went down a little bit because as crave response, or as you know, you're gonna have those fun foods the next day. You don't feel like you have to go all out before that work week. Let's say it dropped down to 2,500 in that case. Now, what was once before a big jump up on the weekend, which caused either the weight to stay stagnant and plateau or going up in weight, it has now went down and you stood in your caloric deficit. So in this case, that weight may have dropped down to 149, 148, 147, just depending on what your physical activity looked like at the end of the week. And then all things considered, the goals that you want. So when we think about this, we want to try to double the amount of fun foods we have throughout the week by following that 70-30 rule. So again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we figure out your TDE a little bit later. That'll also double the sustainability and the consistency that we want, which in turn will increase results, not only in a short-term aspect, but also in that long-term aspect. Now, I want you guys to take a little action, and again, this might take a little bit of time as I go through this presentation for you guys, but I want you to find your TDEE. Now, if you want to do that and pause this video, you're more than welcome to. Your TDEE is your total daily energy expenditure. You could just type in TDEE calculator. So if you type in TDEE calculator, that'll bring you to somewhere where it's going to ask for your age, your height, your weight, and then your activity level. Once you pop all those in, it'll give you a fair assessment based off of your relative age, height, and weight, and your activity level, what your calories should look like to maintain the same exact weight. That's your maintenance calories, the amount of calories that you would burn daily. Now again, we'll talk about how we can find that to be a little more accurate when you pop into it, but just to start, that's what it would look like. Step 2 would be finding your macros, and I would say wait until the end of this video to figure that out, or just skip ahead if you'd like to, but you've been missing out a lot of fun. And then step 3 is finding those comfort foods. Now, I would say step 3 is something we could do right now. I want you to make a list of about 5 to 10 comfort foods that you truly enjoy. These could be things that you have on the weekend. These could be from restaurants, things that you make. It could be small, it could be large. I want you to write that down. I want you to have that list ready for you. So when it comes down to, let's just say you had a very busy Wednesday, very stressful Wednesday for that matter, and you really want to indulge in those comfort foods, we'll figure out how we can fit that in about 30% of your plan so you can still hit the goals you want but still enjoy the foods that you do have beforehand. Now, number 2 of the myths and the truths. Myth number 2 is less food equals more results. I hear this pretty often where people believe that if you have less food, and now number 2 of the myths versus the truths. Myth number 2 is less food equals more results. Now, granted, if we are trying to lose weight, we want to be in that caloric deficit. In turn, that will be less food. But sometimes people take it a little bit overboard where, let's just say our maintenance is around 2,000 calories and our typical deficit, let's just say, is at 1,500 calories. Some people will take it to the absolute extreme and just eat 800 calories. Now again, can you do that and lose weight? 1,000%. Will it breed more results? Potentially. Will you feel great doing it? Absolutely not, and it'll probably be a little more short-term than long-term. But hey, if that's what you're looking for, by all means, go ahead. Internally functioning speaking is not going to be the greatest. You may see some long-term issues with that. But I want to turn your attention to that restriction side of things. And the truth is, restriction may kill your energy in your internal function, which again, you may get some results, but it will kill your long-term results and your eating habits for the long term. Why? When we think of regulation of the body, I want to talk about a little bit upregulation and downregulation. Now, your upregulation is just an increase in expenditure. So if I was in a caloric surplus, again, with that caloric surplus, what I'm getting here is an increase in the amount of calories relative to my maintenance. So if my maintenance is around like 2,000 and I'm eating 300, 500, 600 more calories, that's a caloric surplus. With the caloric surplus, our body's gonna work a little more overtime to burn the calories that is above our maintenance, right? Our body is always trying to maintain something called homeostasis. Make this easy for you. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is just the balance of the body, or the balance of whatever you want to call it. So if we're trying to lose weight or gain weight, our body's always trying to maintain some sort of homeostasis, so it's going to work overtime in relation to that. That's where that upper regulation will happen. We'll start to burn more calories potentially. Now, down regulation is that decrease in expenditure. So if you're seeing in the concept of less food equals more results, if you're eating only 800 calories, your body is going to severely downregulate. If you're typically, let's just say, burning 500 calories on 10,000 steps, it may drop down to 450 calories, and your essential energy won't really be there to potentially hit those 10,000 steps. So when we think about just maintaining that homeostasis, we also want to keep in mind that upregulation and that downregulation. Now, breaking down a little bit more of what TDE stands for, that total daily energy expenditure. There's 4 separate categories when we talk about total daily energy expenditure. The first one in this matter is going to be our BMR. Now, BMR is your metabolism, your basal metabolic rate. A lot of people get it confused with, the actual TDE and the BMR. People think your metabolism makes up what your TDE is, but it's only one of the 4 categories that we think about. So with your BMR, this is constituted by let's turn that off, your muscle mass, your body fat, as well as your internal organs, okay? So we have those muscle mass, body fat, and your internal organs make up what your metabolism is. So, for example, if your muscle goes up, your metabolism goes up. If your body fat goes up, your metabolism goes up. If your muscle goes down, your metabolism goes down. If your body fat goes down, your metabolism goes down as well. And I'm going to pick that apart a little bit later as well. Your thermic effect of food is what you eat, right? So if I'm thinking about your macronutrients from before, this is where they come in handy. You have your protein, you have your carbs, and then you have your fat. Now, your protein out of the 3 macronutrients are going to have the highest thermic effect of food. What do I mean by that? Your protein, being that it has the highest thermic effect of food, means that you're going to be burning more calories trying to digest and utilize that macronutrient. So if I fill someone at 150 pounds, 2,000 calories a day, and they're having 150 grams of protein, and then I increase their protein by 30 grams, don't change anything else, physical activity stays exactly the same, calories stay exactly the same, they will see a reduction or an increase in the caloric expenditure because they're having more protein, okay? Same thing can hold true to those carbs and fat, but at a very, very lesser degree. Now, if I was to rank these in terms of thermic effect of food, you have protein at number 1, with your protein being at number 1, you have your fat at number 2, and then you have your carbohydrates at number 3. Now, your exercise activity thermogenesis. This is your physical activity or your conscious activity. So think of anything about like working out, walking, running, anything where you're moving and creating some sort of physical labor. It could just be construction work, it could be moving furniture, whatever, so be it. And then the last one is going to be your NEAT. Now, your NEAT is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I like to think of this as unconscious activity. Sometimes we fidget, spinning, just things that aren't necessary, that we're used to doing or we know that we are doing it. Like me, for example, I fidget a lot, and when I fidget, it's coming through as non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So next time around, if you ever catch yourself fidgeting or like moving your leg like this right here, just think back to what we were just talking about here, that NEAT, because that plays actually a pivotal role in what we do daily and how many calories we are burning when we're looking at trying to maintain our weight, lose our weight, or even gain our weight. Now, we're trying to figure out our calorie total. This is very, very important. I want to break it up into blocks for you guys. Your basal metabolic rate is probably going to make up or constitute most of the calories that you burn daily, okay? So this could be anywhere from 1,000 calories to 2,000 calories, depending on your weight, your muscle mass, and your body fat for that matter, and your organs, things like that, okay? The problem with the BMR is that you really can't change this too much, right? If I was to gain a pound more muscle, I'm only burning roughly about like 15-ish more calories a day, 8 to 15 calories, same thing with that body fat. Now, thermic effect of food, exercise activity thermogenesis, and your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, this can be manipulated way greater than this BMR. Now, when I'm thinking about thermic effect of food, if I'm someone that's eating 100 grams of protein a day and I up my protein total, ensuring that, I could take it to 200 grams, then I would see a increase in the amount of calories that I expend daily. Same thing with exercise activity. If I'm someone that's walking 2,000 steps a day and I up it to 10,000, 12,000, 14,000, or even start going on runs, that's going to be a lot greater than what it was before. And again, I can significantly reduce that by dropping the 12,000 steps to 2,000 steps. We could play and manipulate with these totals as much as possible. Same thing with non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, with this, you don't necessarily know that it's happening, but it does play a very pivotal role in burning more calories or less calories for that matter. So I do want to mention that this right here is going to be the biggest thing or the most important thing relative to your basal metabolic rate. So if you thought about it to yourself and based on what I've told you so far, who do you think has the faster metabolism? Is it someone who's 250 pounds, they have 30 pounds of muscle mass and 30% body fat, or it'll be someone who is 150 pounds with 40 pounds of muscle mass and 10% of body fat? The correct answer? A. Have you ever heard people say that, oh, you have a really fast metabolism, and they're looking at someone who is like 6% body fat, eating 4, 5, 6,000 calories a day? It's not that they have a fast metabolism, it's that they have a fast TDEE. But if we were to compare metabolism, This one right here, this 250-pound individual, will be far greater in their basal metabolic rate because they are holding, even though it's less overall muscle, it's 100 pounds more of body fat. And organs, give or take, is going to be about the same for everyone. But with that being said, like body fat's a lot lower here, as well as this is a little bit higher here. So the metabolism here is going to be faster of someone who's a little bit larger than that of someone smaller. Now I want to turn your attention a little bit to fueling versus starving, and 3 factors to consider, because some people believe that, like we go back to the example here, when we're talking about 800 calories, that they may still feel okay, they may have some sort of energy. But if I was to compare the two, I want 3 factors to consider. It's number 1, my recovery. If I'm looking at my workouts, let's move it over to a white here. Turn that on. My recovery, is it high or is it low? When I say high or low, am I saying, can I recover day by day and still hit the same numbers and improve with that progression day by day on the workouts that I do? So if you're coming in here on a Monday and we do an upper anterior day, and then on Tuesday you're coming in to do a lower day, do you feel exhausted from that Monday where we can't even hit Tuesday? Or B, you come in the next week on Monday and we're not hitting our numbers week after week? It may be a factor to consider that you might be starving rather than fueling yourself. Cravings, are they high or are they low? When we are in severe calorie deficits, we usually see our cravings a lot more. Now, if you're fueling yourself the right way, we're having those fun foods of around 30%, then we're staying at a lower portion for our cravings. Our mood, is it good or is it bad? Are we typically in a bad mood with the foods that we're eating? We're not enjoying the dieting portion, so be it, or are we in a good mood, right? We're enjoying what we're eating, we're enjoying the progress that we're getting, we're enjoying the results that we're getting. These are all 3 factors to consider. So I want you to think of this as like a battery icon. Now, with us, our bodies as humans, we can't necessarily shuttle more food into it and automatically, let's just say, get more energy. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time for everything to fuel up. So I like to think as our bodies as humans. So as humans, our bodies are not a gas tank where we fuel up at the gas rink and get all the fuel we want. I think of this more as a battery, right? Our phone batteries, we have to put it on the charger for a few hours just to hit that 100%. It's kind of the same thing where it takes a little bit more time as us humans to gather what we need to get back to the right glycogen stores, the right triglyceride stores, the right protein, all those things. So if someone's fueled, we're going to see a higher energy, higher recovery. We're going to see better workouts. We're going to see a better mood. But if someone's a little bit starved, they're going to be on that lower energy spectrum. They're going to have a little bit more craving. It's going to be driving you a little bit more insane. And then that burnout comes so much more quick, right? We want to make sure that we stay in a position where we are not getting burned out as consistently as, it may be for someone that is starved. So what affects these things? Number 1, external stressors. This can be family. It can be work. It could be girlfriend, boyfriend, relationships. These are all things to consider when we're talking about trying to figure out what is affecting us internally or externally. Now with those external stressors, there is your de-stress and then there's eustress. So with our de-stress, think of these stressors that are things that don't do anything good for us, right? They're bad stress. This can be getting laid off. This can be a breakup, right? These are things that we don't want to pay too much energy to because it's just going to dip our energy down that much more. So if we go back to that battery icon, what we're going to see is a lot more of that lower energy, even if we aren't starved for that matter and we're eating everything well. Now, if we're talking about, again, the external stressors that you stress is the good stress. Now, in this case, this could be a promotion, right? We get more out of something. This could be a new relationship. It may be stressful because we're creating a new problem with the solutions, but it's good problems that we want. Now, sleep. Next thing on sleep is going to be, is it quality? Let's see if that works. Quality or quantity. Someone can get 6 hours of quality sleep, but not as much quantity, but someone could also get 8 hours of quantity of sleep, but not as much quality. So we could look at these metrics from things like a Whoop and Oura Ring, but if you don't have that, think of restfulness. Okay, when you're waking up in the morning, do you feel restful? Do you feel alive? Do you feel energized? These are all telltale signs to figure out if sleep is affecting you or it's not affecting you. And again, we could manipulate sleep with better nighttime routines, morning routines, as well as nutrition. But again, it's not a one size fits all. It's all individualized based off of what you are doing and how we could help improve that. Your food quality. So this could essentially be the types of foods that you're eating, right? If I'm someone that is only 50-50, where I'm having 50% of whole foods, 50% of bad foods, I'm not gonna feel as good as someone that's 80-20. Relatively to that, if I'm someone that's in a caloric deficit significantly, I'm going to see that my food quality may be good, but I still may be a little bit more, not as fueled up, so to speak. And the same thing with the 80-20, being in a caloric surplus, I'm gonna have a little bit more energy in me. Food quantity, same deal as what I'm talking about before. If I'm in a surplus, I'm going to potentially feel a little bit more alive. If I'm in that deficit, I'm not always going to feel my best. That's why it's so much more important to keep that food quality as high as possible, because again, it's going to help us feel better long term, not only that short term. Now, with our meal timing, think of this as every 2 to 5 hours, we want to try to be getting something in our system. If you're someone that intermittent fasts, if you're someone that does keto, if you're someone that does carnivore, or you just like one meal a day, you're an OMAD dieter, that is totally fine. Whatever it takes to get the calories that we need in. I'm talking about in the respect of trying to keep our energy, our fuel, as high as possible. We want to try to keep our meal timing window to around 2 to 5 hours. So if I was eating at 8 a.m., I want to eat anywhere from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. next. That could be a larger meal, that could be a smaller meal, that could be a little snack, a big snack, it doesn't matter, as long as we're getting something in that's going to help us tremendously to not only regulate our hunger hormones like leptin and ghrelin, but also help us feel full overall and energized. And then workout quality, right? Our workout quality in the sense that, are we being intense in what we are trying to accomplish? When we say intense, we think more so how effective is the workout in terms of getting closer to pushing ourselves. If you're coming into workout and you're seeing you have 5, 10, 15 reps left in the tank and you're stopping yourself short of what you are capable of, more often than not, you're not going to see the progress that you want. So keep that in mind when you are coming to, whether it's workout here at TPP or workout with yourself. You are leaving gains on the table if you are not pushing yourself to some sort of nth degree. Some action steps I want to work on right now, based off of what we just went over on this little section. I want you to take one of the TDE categories, okay, that you are lacking in, and then I want you to improve it. So improving wise, I want you to think, for the basal metabolic rate, this is one that's going to be a little bit harder for you to improve. The only way you improve that is either gaining a little bit of fat or gaining a little bit of muscle. So don't really worry about that one too much. I want to take these three and try to improve it. For most of you, it would be in this category right here, that TEF and the EAT. Your thermic effective food, we could be increasing more protein. We could be dropping a little bit of carbohydrates. Your exercise activity, thermogenesis. We could think about getting more physical activity in, whether that's steps, whether that's running a little bit more throughout the week, whether that's doing a little bit more workouts, depending on recovery and if we're feeling ourselves well. But we're going to take what we're lacking in right now, asking yourself that, and then we're going to improve it for this entire week that you're watching this video. And then number two, I want you to take one of these effectors, or the stressors, or whatever you want to call it, and improve your fueling. Okay, so if you're someone that is not getting quality of sleep, how can we improve that? Do we have to go to bed a little bit earlier? Do we have to change your bedtime routine? Do we have to change what we're eating before we go to sleep? The external stressors, do we have to change, how we respond to these de-stress? Do we have to incorporate more eustress? The food quality, do we have to have more whole nutritious-based foods? Do we have to have less bad foods? The quantity, do we have to eat a little bit less? Do we have to eat a little bit more? Meal timing, do we have to shorten our window in terms of how long we're waiting to eat? Or do we have to expand it? And then workout quality, are we actually pushing ourselves in the gym each time, or are we taking a back seat on some of the days? Pick one of these for the next week and work on that to improve your overall fueling so you feel the best possible way that you can in high energy, better workouts, and your better mood. Now to round it out, I want to make nutrition stick for you, what we talked about before, the data and the education. This, think of education. What you are going to be calculating now is going to be your data. Now, let's find your macros. I'm going to have an example here of a 130-pound female. They're going to be 5'4". They're moderately active, so they're working anywhere from 2 to 5 times a week, depending on how much they're pushing yourself in the workout, and they're 35 years old. Now, if we're taking the same TDEE calculator that I told you to look up before, they would be roughly at 1,968 calories daily. Now, their goals is to drop body fat and tone. Okay, tone is just better body composition, think of it that way. With protein, this is going to determine the amount of muscle mass and our need to be full. So if we're trying to figure out how much protein we should have, it's determined by the amount of muscle mass that someone has and the need to be full, satiated. The more protein we have, typically we're going to feel a little more fuller, longer. So how do we figure this out? Number one, it's either if you do have a decent amount of muscle mass, but you get hungry rather quick, you would take 1 gram per pound, so in this case, the 130 pounds, and you would multiply that by 1 and get your protein total. Now with this, the A portion, I put it where you start at 1 gram per pound and you can increase. So if you're someone who has a large amount of muscle mass and you get hungry rather quick, this number right here could go all the way up to 1.4, 1.5. Now again, you have to understand that the more protein you eat, the heavier it's going to be on you because you're going to be a little more full. If you're someone that needs that to stay full, then you go ahead and put that at 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. If you're someone that just needs a little bit, you don't have that much muscle mass, and you could, handle a little bit more whole dense foods, not too much of it, then you would stay at that 1 gram per pound, closer to it. Or B, if you're someone who has a decent amount of muscle mass or a little bit less, but you don't get as hungry as often, you could take that 1 gram per pound and do a little bit less than that. I wouldn't go below 0.6 grams per pound, but anywhere from 0.6 to 1.0 would be a good range for you to work off of. Now in this case, just for the sake of the example, we'll go 130 pounds here. Now 130 pounds here, 130 grams of protein. Now with 130 grams of protein, as you remember in the beginning here, I told you the calories per gram. So what we do is we take 130 times the 4, which is the 4 calories per gram for 1 gram of protein. That's going to equal 520. Now with the carbohydrates, we determine this by our physical activity, our cravings, and our gut health. Now for our physical activity, if we are doing a decent amount of physical activity, whether that's running 3 to 4 times a week, we're working out 3 to 5 times a week, our cravings, they aren't super crazy, nothing super drastic, we're not really sluggish, and we feel pretty good when we do eat carbs. You want to start around 1.15 grams per pound and increase it from there. So anywhere from 1.15 to all the way up to 2 grams per pound. Again, it depends on what you're trying to get. In this case, we're trying to maintain a deficit, so we would be closer to that 1.15 gram. Now, if you're someone who has no physical activity or little to none, you're somewhat sluggish when you do have carbohydrates, your cravings are a little bit more through the roof when you start to incorporate them. You want to start at that 1.15 and bring it down a little bit more. That could go anywhere from 0.6 to 1.15 in this case. Okay, same thing, you would take what that number would be here, you would multiply by 4, and that's what you would equal to get what you want there. Now our fats, they're going to be determined by our hormonal health, which are typically adjusted by our biomarkers and how we feel. If you are a female and you're going through your menstrual cycle, sometimes it's good to manipulate the fats and carbohydrates as you move through your cycle periods. But for the sake of the example, we're going to try and keep it as streamlined as possible. Your satiety, again, the fullness, if you're having fats in a meal, it sticks a little bit better, so you might stay fuller for a little bit longer with the higher fats, but they do sneak up on you rather quick because of the 9 calories per gram, so keep that in mind. And then your overall eating habits. Now, if you're someone that likes tastier foods, typically that comes with a little more fats, like oils, butters, things like that, and you eat all it often, I would recommend starting anywhere from 0.4 grams per pound and going all the way up to 0.6 grams per pound. Okay. If you're someone who values the function of what you get out of eating certain foods over the food taste overall, then I would recommend you start at 0.4 grams per pound and then bring it all the way down to 0.3 if needed. I wouldn't drop fat below 40 grams, no matter how much you weigh. So never go underneath that 40 gram total. It should be 40 grams and above. So if you're someone who weighs 100 pounds and you're putting 0.3 times 0.3, don't drop it below that 40 grams. We want to try to keep our hormonal health as best as possible. Okay, so you would take all this stuff. I'm going to do the calculations right now for you, and then I'll pop back into it in the next one. Now, based off this example, you can see that the carbohydrates will come out to around 153 if we were to do 130 times that 1.15. That's going to equal 153 times the 4 is going to have 612 calories from coming from your carbohydrates. Now, if we were to do your fats at 0.4 times that 130 of the example, we're talking 52 times that 9, which then equal 468 calories coming from your fats. Now, we take all three of these, those 520, 612, and the 468, we add those up together with each other, and we equal 1,600 calories. So if we're talking about trying to maintain that caloric deficit, we're below that 1,900 threshold, so we're eating roughly around 368 calories below total of the deficit. Now, if you're someone who's just starting out, I recommend eating closer to this window of what your maintenance looks like on your TDEE, and then trying to improve or increase your physical activity so you can try to stay as fueled as possible, like we talked about in the battery icon demonstration. So you feel 1, satiated, 2, getting in the rhythm of things, and then 3, you're getting more physical activity with that, because again, the physical activity is one of the harder things to start off with when we're trying to improve it. So that's what it will look like in this example. So take what yours would be, figure it out. If you have any questions, let us know. Now, when we try to figure out your eating patterns, there's a couple things we want to do. There's 5 steps I like to think. Number 1, space meals out evenly. Okay, when we think about spacing meals out evenly, we want to think about that 2 to 5 hour window. Okay, 2 to 5 hours of spacing our meals out. That's going to make sure that we're staying as full as possible and we're getting all the necessary nutrients throughout the day. Number 2, protein should be in every meal. That could be anywhere from 10 grams all the way to 100 grams. Really depends on when you're having the protein, how much you could take in one sitting, but 10 grams to 100 grams is not going to change how much you can utilize and digest. That is just a myth. You are able to sit down, have 100 grams of protein, and still metabolize the 100 grams, okay, over a period of time. Number 3, your carbs around the higher energy demand bouts. So if you're someone who works out in the morning time, I would recommend having your carbohydrates more during the morning time. If you're someone at night, have it more towards that night time. If you're someone in the middle portion of the day, have it somewhere in the middle. If you're someone who does no physical activity whatsoever, I would recommend in the times of the day that you typically do need more energy to have those carbohydrates around, spaced out around 1 to 2 hours before that higher energy bout. Number 4, fats should start and end a day for the most part, or it'll stay away from the workout window. So if you're someone who works out earlier in the day, like let's say 5, 6 a.m., you want to try to start your fats around the mid portion of the day and end it there, and then vice versa. If you're someone who works out at the end portion of the day, try to have the fats in the beginning of the day and a little bit more midday for the most part. Number 5, hydrating properly. Think as hydration is not just water, so it's a combination of that water, so that H2O. It's also going to be magnesium for a few things, sodium for a few things, potassium, and a few other choice minerals that are important. So my recommendation is trying to start our day with, let's just say, anywhere from 12 to 16 ounces of water. We could add in something called a low salt. So low salt is a combination of potassium and the sodium, as well as just a pinch of some iodized salt. Iodized more so to regulate that thyroid and our metabolism overall. So if we had a pinch, just a pinch of these, and then a pinch here, you'll see some sort of improvement in your hydration, at least to start the day. Now, if you're someone who gets tension headaches, whether it be throughout the day or when you work out, I would highly recommend having that pinch of low salt before you start to have those tension headaches. It's going to be incredibly important because your potassium may be just slightly lower than we want. Now, let's just put it all together. Now, I wanted to make a little bit of frameworks for you guys. When we try to figure out what we should do moving forward for our eating habits, we have what our macros should look like. We have how we should space out our eating patterns. Now we have to put all of it together. We want to take into account your lifestyle. Think of your lifestyle as your archetype. Your archetype could be a busy mom, a trainer, an avid traveler. Your preference, that could be your preferred eating habits. Is it convenience? Is it tasty? Is it more for function? And your goals. These are your accomplishments, what you're trying to accomplish. Do you want to just move better? Do you want to drop 20 plus pounds? Do you want to gain muscle? It could be anything and everything. When we think of preference, it could be a multitude of things. When we think of lifestyle, it could be a couple things. When we think of goals, it could be a multitude of things. Now here's a Venn diagram that I want you guys to fill out yourself. On the left side, these are the things you have been doing. It could be nutritionally or it could be fitness-wise. It could be sleep as well. Put all the things that you have been doing pertaining to what we're talking about here today. On the right side, you're going to put what the things you haven't been doing. Okay, some of the things that other people do around you that you just think it may be good, think may not be good. You just write it down on the right side. And on the middle, this is kind of our finding our fit side. This is what you've been told is right, okay? From the nutrition industry, the fitness industry, your trainers, your coaches, yourself, what you think to be right, you'll put in here. Now, these are the action steps. I want you to take the middle and assess what you have been doing and is it truly necessary? So on that left side, what you have been doing, is it necessary to get to that middle or towards your goals of what you want? Number two, I want you to take the things that you are doing right now that is hurting you, and I want you to eliminate them one by one. So that just means you could cross them out, or it just means week by week you try to get rid of them. And then number three, I want you to use the data that we spoke about before, the weigh-ins, the progress photos, circumference measurements, rep and strength progressions on the graphs, all those things, or one of those things, to make sure you are moving in the right direction of what your goal is. So whatever we find here is what we should be moving with moving forward based off of our archetypes, based off our goals, our preferences, and what our macros look like. So taking all this into account, okay, this is going to create what makes our nutrition stick for the long term relative to just the short term. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the comments or talk to us directly. I look forward to seeing you in our next workshop.